everybody? Hey, we seem to be working. I sound very, very loud now. So this is a talk about the leg kernel and how it relates to the reference platform kernel. So mostly it's going to cover what I currently do and then a little bit of what the reference platform is going to do. But I have to say to start with that I am not the canonical source of information about the reference platform. So if you want the canonical source, you have to go and talk to Amit or Ricardo. So I've taken the information from meetings that we've discussed, but obviously there's meetings going on all this week, so some of this stuff may have changed slightly. So if you need the exact definition, please go and talk to them. Anyway, this is Team Leg, working away very, very hard. So I've been maintaining the leg kernel for a couple of years now. Basically, it started off because within the team, we needed something where we could take all the engineers' work, incorporate it into one tree for testing. You know, some engineers are not working on all the things, they're not familiar with some of the areas. They just need to be able to get a tree that they can build and run and test and use and play. Traditionally, we did have platform support in there for some of the platforms, basically because there were no platform support for any of the platforms upstream. But from now on, I am not carrying any platform support in this tree at all. So you're only going to run the leg kernel stuff on stuff that's already mainlined. That's mainly because, obviously, I don't have in-depth, detailed information on all the platforms. I can't really continue maintaining stuff. That's where the reference platform comes in, as we'll see later. My release process is fairly informal. It's basically when the engineers have done enough that I feel that it's worth incorporating a new tree, I just make one. It gets minimal testing. Basically, I've got some boards available to me. I boot them up. I'll see if Debian runs. I'll see if CentOS runs. And that's about all that happens. And it tracks basically the RC releases of the mainline kernel. Just basically, sometimes dash next is a bit too advanced, and it can be a pain. It does mean that the branches you see in the leg kernel and which come from the ACPI team tree and other leg trees are not always identical, because I've had the backport, so the patch series has gone upstream, because obviously that's against subsystem next, whatever subsystem the patches are against. So I've done slight changes to backport them to bring them back into the leg kernel tree. So reference platform is a new thing for us, obviously. So for the enterprise platform, we're going to work on a 6-monthly release cadence. So Amit told me that he wanted what I wanted to submit as patches 6 weeks before he was doing a release. So internally, I want to do that like an extra 2 weeks to give myself time to stabilize stuff, check stuff. If I find last-minute problems, maybe revert to a previous patch series, that sort of thing. So I'm giving, basically by saying that I will fork off 8 weeks, it's just giving me 2 weeks internally just to work on stuff. The branches will be selected for what I consider stability. Sometimes, obviously, as a new patch series comes out, it doesn't quite work as expected. But if the previous one did work as expected, but had some review comments, I'll fall back to the previous one, because this is what's going on to the reference platform, which obviously has to be a fairly stable kernel release. I'm planning to kind of try and formalize a bit the status testing I do on this. I haven't had a time to yet. Obviously, if anyone were to volunteer and say, yeah, I've got some wonderful ideas for kernel testing, I'd love to hear from you. And then, basically, I will release the reference platform team 6 weeks before release. So that gives us 6 weeks of integration time with all the other platforms, and if I need to, we can do respins in that time, but there should be no major feature changes. So now we're going to talk about reference platform. That's why I've got the little guys referencing things. So the difference between what I do in leg kernel and the reference platform is the reference platform actually has a formal process. If you go to the link at the bottom of the slides, you can actually see all the processes, and all the information should be there. If it's not, as I said, go talk to Ricardo, go talk to Amit. and they can point you in the right direction. Obviously, the reference platform is designed to be a reference, so it should follow kind of best practices. There is a formal testing strategy, and I believe all the documents, again, are on the wiki. Not being a QA guy, I haven't actually gone into depth on those. There is a formal topic branch strategy, and this does kind of feed back into the leg kernel, because obviously I have to obey this strategy as well for the work that the leg team's doing. And the final one is the link. It's a bit small to read, but you can find it through the 96 board site fairly easily. So this is the kernel rules which are on the wiki. It's the plans for the RP kernel rules. So basically, the patches should not break a multi-platform kernel. For the first couple of releases, we did knack patches that did break the multi-platform kernel, so we are fairly serious about this. In general, patches should only be in there if they've already gone to LKML. Preferably they're on their like V2 or V3 review series, so we at least know they're moving in the right direction. I know if you look in the first couple of releases, obviously there's some exceptions to this because we were just spinning up the process to start with, but this should improve as we go on. Patches will be dropped over time if basically there is no progress on them. They should not be there in the first case if their first submission to LKML just said, you know, this is the wrong direction to go in. Again, you will currently see some patches in there that has happened, but that's because for the first, you know, cycles we had to get something working. But Amit is very strong and he actually intends to do this for the next cycle. And obviously, you know, if the patch doesn't apply to a newer kernel, there's nothing we can do with it. We don't have the manpower to forward port people's patches and carry them. So basically, if we're interfering with somebody else's garden in Linaro, it would be good to talk to them and just get checks that they're okay with the changes. Obviously, this happens at times. And then the next one is more about the platforms that are going to be supported in the reference platform. This is the enterprise side of things. The members will delegate an engineer who's responsible for each patch series. That's for their platform. So, for example, currently we've got Hanjun is the delegated member for the D02. So if there's a problem with the D02 series, you go and talk to Hanjun. And well volunteered. But that's just an example. Basically, there will be a person for each platform that's supported on the enterprise side of things. And that's because, obviously, internally as Linaro, we don't have access to all the hardware specs. We don't have access to the hardcore silicon debugging stuff. So, and some problems require that. So somebody needs to be responsible for that area of things. 6 is fairly obvious. Because we're doing formal testing on this stuff and there is a QA suite for it, we can only accept patches for platforms that we actually have. Because we need to have them in the lab, we need to have them in Lara, and the test suite does need to run on them. And number 7 is basically, you don't see this in the leg kernel tree, but if you actually look at the reference platform Git, you will see each patch is tagged by Amit as to where its source is and its expected destinations and things like that. And the next couple of slides, the next slide has a list of example tags. Oh, no, sorry, the next slide is another rule. Yeah, as Amit said, he is planning to publish statistics on like how many patches made it mainline and that, you know, just to prove that things are actually moving forwards. And also it gives internal like warnings. You know, this patch has been sitting in the reference platform for ages and nothing's, you know, we need to know this sort of information. And this one's the tags, so they're fairly self-explanatory. He's like, the patch list has come from the LKML mailing list. the patch sets come from somebody's tree but hasn't been submitted yet. Sometimes, obviously, it's because we're integrating a lot of stuff, there's a temporary hack that's had to be done last minute for a release. So if there's a patch, the net will be marked up for such. So no up is basically the same thing. Is if there really is a need for a patch series that will never go upstream, but for various reasons the reference platform team has decided they require that patch series for this release, it will be marked with that. And to post is if Amit really trusts somebody and they buy him lots of beer, they can actually get a patch series in without having sent it to LKML. But Amit said to me, this is going to be a very, very rare occurrence. And that's basically all I've got to say on the subject. So it's up to people for questions, really. Or we can all go and have coffee. No, looks like coffee's the option then. Oh, only if Red Hat's paying for it.